Monday, Amy and I took Ulysses and Molly and Henry to school. This morning, we rushed them out the door. Janine gave them a ride to Mesita and to Wiggs. And I got to tell you, there's some part of me, and there's a big part of me, that wants to stay here and be with my family and be with my community. I love El Paso. There have even been some who've suggested that I stay in Texas and run for Senate. But that would not be good enough for this community. That would not be good enough for El Paso. That would not be good enough for this country. We must take the fight directly to the source of this problem, that person who has caused this pain and placed this country in this moment of peril, and that is Donald Trump.
Back with us, Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke. I want to ask you about that moment in the speech. Obviously, you've thought about it. You've heard all the talk about it. Everyone telling you the way they think you should run your political life and what your campaign choices should be. You know the question is going to keep coming up, this question of what about dropping out of this presidential race and taking up the race for the Senate, especially with John Hickenlooper dropping out and leaning toward, it seems, a race in Colorado. He would be, people say, sure to win that. Just need 2 more Democrats in the Senate if John Hickenlooper can win a seat. What's your full explanation to voters in Texas and the country about that?
I'm running for president, and I'm taking this fight directly to Donald Trump, in large part because my community has borne the brunt of the consequences of Donald Trump. His open racism, his invitation to violence, the white terrorism that he's inspired, that came to my community, drove 600 miles to my community and killed 22 of our fellow El Pasoans and Juarezes, more murders than we see in an entire year in under 1 hour, inspired in large part by this president. So what he is doing to America, what he's doing to my community, the response to that is to take the fight directly to him and to defeat him and to be the leader that this country needs and does not have right now. Someone who's not going to inflame, but someone who's going to heal, someone who's not going to drive us apart, someone who's going to bring us together, someone who operates not with fear, but inspires hope and believes in our fellow Americans. That's the kind of leader that El Paso has taught me to be. And when it comes to the Texas Senate race, there are 7 extraordinary candidates running right now, any one of whom would be far better than John Cornyn, and every one of whom stands every chance of being able to beat him in 2020. I am not worried about Texas, and I'm grateful to those who are running for Senate, but I'm running to be president of this country.
Do you have December 9th marked in your calendar? December 9th, I believe, is the last day you can file in the Senate Democratic primary in Texas. And I'm afraid, Congressman, you might be getting this question right up until December 9th.
Yeah, no. And let me make your show the place where I tell you and I tell the country, I will not in any scenario run for the United States Senate. I'm running for president. I'm running for this country. I'm taking this fight directly to Donald Trump, and that is what I am exclusively focused on doing right now.
Well, let's stay with this because you've just created a breaking news moment here, because I just want to expand on what you said about the other candidates who are running, because you are now definitely, absolutely out of the Senate race in Texas, according to what you're telling us tonight.
That's correct. Absolutely. And I really mean this. There is an extraordinary field, a field that looks like Texas in the diversity of experience and biography and background and expertise and skills that they'll bring to bear, not just in the campaign, but the person who wins the nomination and then who defeats John Cornyn will be able to do for our state and for this country in the United States Senate. So I feel very confident, very optimistic about our prospects as a state and as a party. And again, grateful to those who have entered the arena and are running to serve us.
Did your Senate campaign, do you believe your Senate campaign has, in effect, paved the way for the next Democratic Senate campaign in Texas, and that there's a lot to learn from the way you campaigned in Texas for the next Democratic nominee for the Senate seat in Texas?
Absolutely. I got to lead an extraordinary effort, the largest grassroots campaign that we've ever seen in Texas. We went to every one of those 254 counties, no me importa how red or how blue. We went to young people who we were told not to spend time with because we were told they didn't vote. And I said, look, I wouldn't vote either if no one ever showed up for me and didn't listen to what I had to say and didn't include me in the story of this country. And at the end of the day, though we didn't defeat Cruz, we came awful close, won more votes than any Democrat has in the history of the state. And importantly, Lawrence, won independence for the first time in decades and won nearly 500,000 Republicans who voted for Greg Abbott, a Republican for governor, and me on the same ballot. Didn't have to trim our sails, showed up with the courage of our convictions, but also showed up to listen, to learn, to bring our fellow Texans in. And a state that had ranked 50th in voter turnout showed up, stood up, and was counted, and is ready for the 2020 Senate race, and I think this is really important, is ready with those 38 Electoral College votes. That's how you defeat Donald Trump. That's how you forever change the political landscape in the United States of America. That's how you get a very ambitious agenda for this country accomplished.
Well, you just made at least 7 Democrats in Texas very happy tonight. The Democratic candidates are already running for the Senate in Texas. Let me go on to one more thing, which is the president today tweeting that 2 Democratic members of the House of Representatives should not be allowed to enter Israel, and then Benjamin Netanyahu follows the president's tweet and doesn't allow them to enter Israel. Imagine yourself on a debate stage with the president on the issue of the president of the United States trying to ban and successfully, in effect, banning 2 members of Congress from entering Israel.
You know, his bizarre and disastrous foreign policy has diminished our standing and I'd argue has made us less safe around the world. This really important alliance that we have with the state of Israel, which has always been predicated on a bipartisan connection between the United States and Israel, he is badly undermining and damaging it at this moment. It's going to be hard to get that back, but I know that we can. But when you add to that, you know, his falling in love with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, or his willingness to take Vladimir Putin's word for what he did when he invaded this country, and then to say that he would welcome foreign participation again, for him to turn away the vulnerable and the defenseless at our border, kids who are desperate for the help, and to lose the lives of 7 children in our custody, in our care, this president has diminished the stature of the United States of America, has weakened us around the world. We need to respond to that by repairing our relationships, ensuring that they are bipartisan, and strengthening our standing everywhere around the globe by delivering for the people of America first, but in conjunction with our partners and our allies and our friends, the very people that Donald Trump has turned his back on.
Former Congressman, Texas Congressman, and Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And as I've told all the other candidates, the candidates are always welcome on this program. Whenever you can do it, we will make room for you. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Very grateful. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.